All right, what do we think? Should we get started? In the interest of time, sound like a plan? All right, hi Bridget, hi Ellen. I'm Colleen Hitchcock. I'm joined here with Amy Bonanno. Amy and myself are both members of the steering committee for the City Nature Challenge. And then we are also joined today by Claire, and I'm gonna let Claire introduce herself in just a second. I'm just gonna bring up the slides and share them with you. So your screen might take a second to adjust, but then hopefully everybody will be on board with kind of seeing what we are projecting. Oops, sorry. Present, here we go. Okay, if you can't see what is in our slides, or you did not get a screen share, if you can just maybe send me a message via the chat or unmute for a minute, that would be great, just so we can see where we are. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Looks like maybe somebody else just jumped in. The purpose of this webinar is twofold. We're going to introduce what is the City Nature Challenge and how to become a collaborating organization or an organizer of events if you're not officially with an organization, or even how to use it perhaps in your classroom. And I will cover that part of this morning's webinar, and then I'll hand it over to Claire, who I'll let introduce herself now and tell you what she's going to talk about a little bit.
So I'm Claire O'Neill, and I'm with Earthwise Aware. And so just to situate a little bit, we are focused on biodiversity and how to protect it. And one of the area where we do a lot of things in terms of outreach is through citizen science, or science focused on biodiversity. So iNaturalist, we are heavy users of iNaturalist for several purposes, and we're going to talk about that because it's a good illustration of how to use it for the CNC as well.
Okay. Just before we begin, are there any questions or any concerns or things you want to tell us or ask us before we get going? Nope. Okay, then I'm just going to go ahead and get started. All right, so thank you. We're really excited. The City Nature Challenge is back for 2020 here in Boston. We are an effort of, actually here, I'm just going to go back one more, sorry. No, I'm not. Maybe I am. Nope. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background about where the City Nature Challenge came from, we are organized globally by the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum of LA. So kind of keep that in mind. And then locally, we have a handful of organizations that are members of the steering committee who have been working to get collaborators involved in joining the City Nature Challenge. And that's who you see kind of outlined at the bottom of our screen, just to give everybody there some information about their role and what's going on there. So the City Nature Challenge is a 4-day BioBlitz, where a BioBlitz is simply a brief intensive survey of biodiversity over a set area and over a set period of time. For the Boston area, we are using iNaturalist to collect and report observations during this 4-day BioBlitz. As you can see across the bottom of your screen there, there's a CNC timeline. And so in 2016, the CNC began as part of an outreach effort between San Francisco and LA, so essentially Cal Academy and the Museum of Natural History. They wanted to engage their communities, and they thought that this would be a fun rivalry to set up. In 2017, they put out a call for other US cities to join. Boston answered that call, and our steering committee kind of got together to get out there. Julia, did you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry. My headphones.
Okay. It was giving me a little flash that you were talking, so I just wanted to make sure that I was, because I'm not seeing you at the moment. In 2018, 68 cities joined worldwide. In 2019, we had about 160 cities worldwide join in. And so far in 2020, it's looking like we're hovering at about 200 cities worldwide. So this really is an international effort to document urban biodiversity. And if you talk to the international organizers and you talk to people who have done the CNC in and around Boston, these are the reasons or some of the drivers behind why to get involved in the City Nature Challenge. Particularly using iNaturalist. Locally, we're hoping to build this community of iNaturalist observers. But it's a great way to connect people to their local nature in urban and metropolitan areas. It's a great way to collect urban biodiversity data that's been available to anyone, including managers and scientists, but really anybody can access the data and look for patterns and see what's going on in their local communities. Have some fun through a friendly competition. So while Boston, it'll still be cold in April, and we likely will not win in terms of the number of species, we definitely try to hold our own against some of the other East Coast cities in particular. It's a great way to grow a volunteer community of biodiversity observers, connect people with each other, build that community both in person and online around local nature, and also to grow a volunteer community of biodiversity identifiers. And so we'll talk both about the observations as well as the identifications as it relates to the CNC as we go through today. The CNC globally by the numbers, here it's some of that information that I already gave you. You can see right across that first row how the number of cities has grown. Simultaneously, the number of observations has also grown, practically what looks exponentially when you start to plot it out. Lots of species being identified in 2019. We had about 31,000 species being observed worldwide and engaged about 35,000 people worldwide. And so that's what it looks like on this global scale. So when you're part of the CNC in Boston, you are not just part of your local BioBlitz at your local park or in your schoolyard or even in your own backyard, but you are part of something that's global in scale. And people are out there doing it all at the same time as you, which is really fun and really exciting. Oops. Okay, here on iNaturalist, and iNaturalist is the platform that we use in Boston to curate and collect our observations. One of the really neat things is that you can see these little spikes. These are iNaturalist observations by week over time. It's a little over a decade old, and you can see these little spikes, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. Those spikes are the City Nature Challenge. So the City Nature Challenge is both a great motivator to get people into iNaturalist, get more observations and rally people around taking pictures of nature and interacting with nature. But then the other really cool thing is that if you look after each of those peaks, it also raises the threshold of users in iNaturalist. And on a local scale, in addition to on the global scale, we're really hoping that once people get into iNaturalist locally, that they start using iNaturalist on a more regular basis and taking advantage of all of the tools that are there to observe and document local biodiversity. The nitty-gritty for the City Nature Challenge is the observation period will be this spring, April 24th through 27th. The identification phase will be April 28th through May 3rd. In phase one, we're talking about observing any type of biodiversity, plants, animals, fungi. There will be lots of lichen, I'm sure, in iNaturalist during the CNC because it's one of those easy things to definitively observe. And then we have a little bit of a period to kind of get our observations identified. And that's identification for the purposes of the CNC and the rankings, but anybody who's used iNaturalist before, and Claire will probably touch on this in the second part, knows that observations can be identified at any point in the future. So even if they don't get identified right away, we'll figure out kind of what we've seen over time. For sure. And so we're really trying to rally people to, or organizers to create events, trainings leading up to the CNC, during the CNC, and even post CNC in terms of encouraging identification on the iNaturalist platform. We have a mission, our steering committee here locally, and I'm not going to read through all of this. The slides will be available afterwards. And I think I've touched upon this a little bit up until this point. But what the steering committee has really been trying to do in terms of motivating around the CNC is not simply about engaging over these the 4-day windows in the end of April, but it's really about building this community of people who are documenting biodiversity, because it's as we get kind of that critical mass of people out there documenting biodiversity and interacting with the natural world that we're hoping that we see our community grow in terms of not just people who appreciate nature, but people who can kind of use the data and use that information in order to create the changes they want to see in their local environment.
Colleen, there is there is some echo. Actually, maybe we won't have it anymore. There was a telephone number that was showing. I think that was a telephone that was echoing.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I can manually mute people if we need to. So just give me a wave. I'm gonna keep my screen, my pictures up. I had kind of hidden you guys for a few minutes there.
Okay.
Okay. In terms of, if you want kind of the bulleted point version of what was on that last slide, it's really the CNC Boston Area Steering Committee is hoping that we are together building a community that understands the value of biodiversity for a healthy environment, can respond to and monitor that changing environment, and feels empowered to make civic decisions based on that biodiversity data that we are together as a community collecting. We're hoping that observers who get on iNaturalist stay on iNaturalist. So the CNC is kind of a galvanizer. It's right at the start of kind of our productive season here in Eastern Mass, but they stay on and continue monitoring data all around. And I put a link down here, which when you get the slide, you'll be able to go to our Boston Area Biodiversity Project as well, which is that same area. In terms of the logistics, our basic goals for 2020, each year we've set as a steering committee some goals in terms of the number of participants to engage, the number of observations we'd like to reach, etc. This is what we're setting for 2020, and I'll show you our past success, and you can kind of see how this maps onto that in just a second. But we're hoping to engage about 1,200 people in making observations, encouraging everybody to make a minimum of 25 to 30 observations. We'll obviously have some super users in there, but we're hoping that we can all get out there and kind of make that level of commitment. We're looking to target about 25,000 observations in that 4-day window in our research area, and hopefully have at least half of those hit research grade. And Claire will explain research grade again in our second half, I think, with iNaturalist. We're looking to get people out to diverse and unique habitats, to increase the number of taxa observed, and to also hopefully increase both the geographic and the participant diversity. So getting good geographic coverage in all of our towns in our research area, and getting out to different groups who will engage with us. Oh, hang on, there we go. Okay, so where are we looking? This is our new map for the CNC. So we've expanded our area for 2020. In our past years, we basically were only looking at everything within the 495 corridor out to Stellwag and Bank. This year, we are slightly outside of the 495 corridor, so we're including all the towns that touch and a few others that asked to be included for the future. And we're going all the way down to the Cape and the islands. Amy and I have been saying this kind of looks like a little happy snail migrating south. So this is our new research area for 2020. We haven't done our total tally of towns, but I think we're at over 170 towns within this area and a significant marine area. And so after today, we welcome any ideas for continuing to engage our marine collaborating organizations and promoting year-round observations and getting some of those new communities in as well. Okay, so here are the Boston numbers. Actually, I have to hide you so I can see the numbers. As we've gone through time from 2017 through 2020. Our steering committee has actually stated about 8 organizations, although the organization composition has changed. If in the future you want to be on the steering committee, let us know. We always have needs. Collaborating organizations, we didn't really track some of this data in 2017, but you can see we grew from 2018 to 2019. We had about 35 organizations that second year, 66 that third year. We'll see how that grows this year. Number of towns, we're continuing to grow the places to observe, and I'll explain what a place to observe is in just a minute. The types of events or number of events, last year we kind of peaked at about 90, including the bulk of those are during, but pre, during, and post. And then here's kind of the data that people really like to look at in terms of our number of observations. So you can see we went from about 3,000 observations that first year, or 4,000 observations that first year, to 20,000 observations last year. We've seen the number of species documented grow as we've gotten more people involved and expanded our geographic reach in terms of getting different communities that hadn't been engaging with us. Last year, we had about 1,100 observers in with us and about 816 identifiers. Our goal last year had been about 1,000 observers, so we did tip over that, so we're pushing for about 1,200 for this year. So hopefully, as we continue to grow, we can continue to grow together and do this in a way that really creates a community. So thinking about how can we reach those goals for 2020, we want to create this community of iNaturalist observers, create a community of iNaturalist identifiers, connect with you guys, our collaborating and participating organizations, to organize volunteers, events, and places, and to do this in a way that meets your needs and what you're hoping to do with a community interested in connecting with nature. We're going to be sharing resources on our website. So these will be resources for organizers and for educators. Some of that's already live, some of that's still being built. We will also continue to organize data quests. And so I will touch on those in a few seconds, but data quests are unique to Boston in that we not only have been working to get our community out observing biodiversity in an opportunistic way, but we have some partnerships where organizations or researchers are interested in a particular question, and they have designed data quests that occur during the CNC as a motivator to engage people. We're working to try and identify data end users. So if you are a potential data end user on this call, please let us know. We'd love to see how people are using the CNC data, and working on getting our community out there to observe year round. Okay. So collaborating organizations and organizers. The first step to kind of getting involved is letting us know who you are and where you are and who you might be organizing. To help us spread the word about the CNC so that we can build your community observers and our bigger community observers together. We are at present working on a communal media kit that will have some additional resources. Ways that you can get involved: you can host an iNaturalist or a CNC training for your members before the CNC. This can be something as simple and straightforward as how to use iNaturalist and get out and encourage people to just try it and use it, and then encourage them to make observations during the CNC. You can host CNC events. Those could still be trainings during the CNC. They could also be guided walks or hikes or even intentional bio blitzes if you are at a location that you would like to start to develop a species list for, or get some more coherent or stronger biodiversity data for those locations. After the CNC, having identification parties to help the data be the best that it can be. And it doesn't necessarily mean being able to identify everything to the species level within iNaturalist, but just helping to move it along. And again, Claire might touch a little bit on the identification process. If not, we can answer some questions about that at the end. But getting it to move along, because the iNaturalist community is wonderful as well, and they will also be helping us move data along. And helping to identify other organizations and organizers to get involved with the CNC for sure. In terms of the existing resources, things that you can find now are our website is hosted by Zoo New England, who is one of the steering committee members. At present, the website is transitioning from our 2019 to our 2020 forward face. So some of the pages have been updated. Some of them are still a little bit of transition, so just give us a little bit of a buffer if you're not seeing something in there yet. But once you get on that web page, what you will see is these categories are where you can go to observe, what the data quests are, how some of the resources for validating observations, what those educator resources are, tracking the data during the CNC, a calendar of events, and then some more of the background information. As a collaborating organization, we will list you on the Zoo New England website as being part of the CNC. We'll be asking for those events that you're planning, and we'll get them on that communal calendar so that people can see where they can go to connect with people face-to-face and not just online via iNaturalist. So all of those events will get in there. We will identify places of where you can go to observe, and so we'll keep our list from last year and add any new places that organizations would like to have kind of a call for volunteers to go out and help to document. And all of that will be up on that website. And once we kind of get you into our workflow as a collaborating organization, we'll have kind of a flow for you to share that information with us. In addition, on the International CNC webpage, under Boston, what you'll see is this year they have the capacity to actually list all the collaborating organizations, so organizations will show up there as well. I didn't include that in here, but we can send that out once we get things going. The educator resources are actually fairly well fleshed out at this point, and those educator resources are both for formal K-12, even higher ed educators, as well as anybody who might be in an informal education role or be looking for tools to kind of get out there. You'll find that there are both international tools, and then there's also US-based NGSS aligned curriculum. And then within the zoo webpage itself, you'll see that we have some resources that are catering just to our Massachusetts educators as well. So they'll be MASTE aligned. So if you are wearing that educator hat, these are some of the tools that are currently already out there that we've been working hard to develop over the past few years, both locally and working with the international organizers. Okay, oops, sorry. For our data quests, so I just want to say a little bit more about our data quests here in Boston, since they are something unique to Boston. At present, we have 6 data quests that have been developed in consultation with local experts. These 6 data quests focus on 18 species, and what we've seen is that the data collected on those 18 species has really increased as compared to not having these data quests present. The data quests are of what I would say are 2 different flavors. There's simple data quests that are those to kind of who might feel overwhelmed by iNaturalist and this kind of opportunity to document everything. There are simple data quests that you can use to kind of just focus your study. So we have a squirrel data quest that basically is having you look for different types of squirrels. And so if documenting everything is too much and you have a community or volunteers who just need a task, there are simple tasks that you can direct people to. There are also a second flavor of data quests that actually have you collecting data beyond iNaturalist, and that data beyond iNaturalist typically involves a type of lab procedure and some data sheets, and then you'll send that information directly to the researchers after the CNC. So your iNaturalist observations are connected with this second level of data collection. The Delectable Oysters quest is one of these kind of more complex data quests. You can do it just documenting invasive species versus native species of oysters, but there's also a secondary protocol that you can download and then get out in the field. So if you're looking for something just beyond maybe going out and taking pictures, this is that type of data quest. And so all 6 of those can be explored right now on the Zoo New England website. We're open to new and additional data quests and promoting them. So we have some templates for developing those. So if you have a research question that you think would fit within the CNC, we're happy to try and support that as well moving forward. All right, in terms of next steps, on February 10th, we're going to have a CNC Boston meetup that will be hosted at the zoo. It will likely be in the afternoon. It'll be an opportunity to connect with other members of the CNC community, learn more about the tools for the CNC and iNaturalist, gather some of those resources, and hopefully for participating organizations to share their own expertise. We expect that there will be sessions on observing, how to organize and lead INAT's events and research, how to organize those events, and how also to maybe improve identifications. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm actually going to stop sharing so that I can see everybody again, and give people an opportunity to ask questions about the CNC, maybe for the next 4 or 5 minutes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to transition a little bit, and Claire is going to take the reins, and she's going to introduce you more specifically to the platform of iNaturalist and how to collect data. So are there any questions at this point? No from Bill. Bill, I'm getting a head shake from. I see that Sierra unmuted, so I'm not sure if she's trying to ask us something.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say hi.
Oh, hey, Sierra.
I don't have my video set up in my new office, so I'm just secret.
That's okay. You can be secret. If anybody wants to also maybe put questions into the chat, I'm happy to try to answer those as well. It looks like Ellen put a question in asking about a Maverick identifier on iNaturalist. And we can definitely touch on that. iNaturalist has different ways that it kind of categorizes people when they start to make identifications based on how effectively they've been identifying things or are learning to identify things. I can't remember exactly what the Maverick level stands for, Claire or Amy. Do you remember or no?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. The Maverick is often when there is, let's say, 2 identification from the crowd, because it's crowdsourced, and yourself or another of the identifier is radically different. So they show as a low, kind of a blaze, I don't know what you call that. You see what I mean? It's kind of strike.
Oh, like a lightning bolt.
Yes,
yeah.
that's
yeah,
one.
yeah.
That one.
Bridget's asking about the educational resources on the website provided by the CNC, asking kind of the origin of them. And so the history of the CNC educational resources is that prior to this year, Encyclopedia of Life, whose education arm was housed here in Boston, they were a member of our steering committee. They actually chaired the international group for developing the CNC educational resources. So I'd like to say that the CNC Boston team definitely had its signature or its thumbprint on those resources and kind of was leading the charge in developing them. And then creating the Massachusetts specific ones were definitely a homegrown effort that Encyclopedia of Life led for us. Does that answer it, Bridget? Super.
But they're also available for any City Nature Challenge group to use. They're not just Boston specific.
Correct. Yeah, and they've been translated into several different languages at this point. So there's lots of great things that are linked out from our zoo page back on the international page. I think our Massachusetts ones though are only on the zoo page. Is that correct, Amy? Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the Massachusetts one will only live kind of with us, but everything else is out on the international page as well.
Does the Cal Academy has a say in it? I think that they're also participating, right, in these resources.
Cal Academy, I'm actually not sure who's chairing the International Ed Resources team this year. I know that Marie from Encyclopedia of Life is still definitely playing a role. I'm sure Cal Academy is that Allison. These are the international organizers that they are also playing a role as well. All right, before we move on to iNaturalist, anything else about kind of what a collaborating organization might do? We're hoping that this is a win-win, that you know, by getting your community into iNaturalist, we can kind of help you with that charge if that's something that's of interest to you, and kind of together we can move forward and keep growing this effort to document local biodiversity.